The food service, hospitality, and retail industries are evolving in ways you've never heard of until now. Hosted by global industry technovator Rob Grimes and powered by the IFBTA, TechBytes is your go-to podcast, putting technology innovation and trends on the menu.
Well, this is one of those special editions of TechBytes here at HRC, Hotel, Restaurant, and Catering, but it's actually more than HRC. It's HT360, which is, 360, right? I don't know. So I'm going to assume that everybody knows Jane Pendlebury. So Jane, who I've known, I certainly know her. We've known each other how many years?
I dread to think.
We don't even want to say that, actually, right?
It's a few decades, I'd say.
She said the word decades. All right, fine. Okay, it is. But Jane Pendlebury is the CEO of HOSPA. And let's not assume that everybody knows who HOSPA is. I do, because I've had the pleasure of being there many years. But why don't you tell us about HOSPA to start, and then we'll just sort of go in the conversation why we'd even have a conversation.
Brilliant. Thanks, Rob. So HOSPA is the Hospitality Professionals Association. We are a UK-based organisation, membership organisation for professionals in finance, revenue management, technology, really anyone in the commercial layer. And we also run the HMA, which is the Hotel Marketing Association. So we look after that aspect of the business as well. And we grew out of what was BAHA, which was the British Association of Hotel Accountants, back in 1969 when we were formed. We did the switch to HOSPA in about 2011.
God, it was formed before you were born. That's pretty good.
I wish.
No, but listen, so, it does have a history. And if you think about it, should we assume that it's all about tech because we're sitting here, or what would be the main mission and the main membership?
Yeah, certainly tech is a very important part, as is finance, which is our history. So finance,
and tech reports to finance.
Quite often.
A lot of time.
Yes, absolutely. So finance, we have a lot of finance leaders on our database and on membership, but also revenue management. So all the audience here should know about revenue management. I often qualify that with pricing, just in case people don't understand what revenue management is. Really, as I said, that commercial layer are our members. So,
the interesting thing, by the way, about revenue management is, you and I both spend time at hospitality schools. And if you went back maybe 10, 15 years ago, there was no such position as a revenue manager. It might have been the front office manager, but all of a sudden this is like a whole area, right?
Well, I was selling revenue management systems back in the year 2000.
Right, but who were you selling it to?
Well, I was selling it to front office, reservations clerks, and whatever, and forward-looking general managers, some finance people, and revenue manager tended to come from the reservations department back then, and that's
good point.
Not so much.
Right. So I was talking not about revenue manager itself, because I actually knew you when you were selling some of those things. However, what I'm talking about is an actual position of a revenue manager, which they recruited schools for, and it used to fall, as rightly you've said, it would fall under reservations, which might be under front office, and just like technology reports to finance, right? So the main mission of HOSPA is
education, sharing best practice, networking, developing. Really, we're here for the benefit of the business.
So thank you for introducing the IFBTA. But what about HOSPA?
Well, yes, I guess we are very similar. We are.
We are.
Yeah. We're very
because
UK
it's not about political action and lobbying.
We don't lobby. We work very closely with UK Hospitality when it comes to lobbying.
Exactly.
So we leave it to the experts to do that. But we will get some of the stats and the figures and the sentiment from the industry together to help feed what they are doing.
So if you have the mission of getting people together, sharing information and education, so how do you actually deliver on that?
We run professional development courses in finance, revenue management and restaurant management, commercial restaurant leadership, as well as we have very niche ones into revenue management for meetings and events. So that's a key part of what we do. We also run lots of events. We have an annual conference, we do webinars. Sometimes it feels weekly. I tend to host most of them, so probably weekly over the course of the year if you flatten it out. And then we have lots of members events, smaller members events compared to the conference throughout the year.
So smaller gatherings of people.
50 to 100 people quite often. Mm-hmm.
So, really very similar, because we have chapter meetings that would be in the same thing. Education and networking is our main mission, and it's really very similar. But I can start to see, so we are going to come back to that word restaurant that you did say there, but we start to see quite a bit of crossover as well. So when you're talking about catering, in our end, we see much more specific conferences on offsite, but catering, delivery, and takeout sort of go together. And even some of the conferences here have sections on it. And there is some crossover even between the restaurant side and the lodging side, isn't there?
There absolutely is. I must say our strength is probably in the lodging side with hotels, more so than in restaurants. But that's a growing part of our business. And we have a networking group of restaurant owners, restaurant leaders that we get together 3 times a year. And we work with them. And really it's the demand from that side of the business that we've developed our restaurant.
Are they mainly restaurant owners and leaders who are working within lodging, or do you get independents as well?
Mainly independents, actually. Very few are working within lodging. Although we have started to see an increase in independent restaurant owners making agreements with hoteliers to run their restaurants within the hotel premises.
Is that like a growing thing here, like in the UK, that there are more and more people are outsourcing their food and beverage or partnering with somebody to come in? Not the celebrity chefs, but I mean just sort of...
I think, yes, whether it's actually growing or I think it's definitely changing. I can't quote the percentages because I don't know the answers to that. But certainly having a small restaurant chain within your hotel is not unusual. There's a lovely company in London called Lima who have Peruvian restaurants, and they have recently started moving into hotels. It's working really well for them.
Well, okay. So, one of the key topics, obviously we're going to have to talk about technology sooner or later here, right? So one of the key topics always comes up about integration. And so there's always this challenge, especially between independents or independent hotels and restaurants, of how are they going to integrate? How are they going to is that integration occurring, or do these people sort of operate separately with their own systems,
I think it varies. There are both of those where they are fully integrated, but I think probably what is more normal is where they come in almost as a franchise operation and work independently.
But they still they would take over like banquets and catering or room service?
Not necessarily. Some just run the restaurant. Others, I guess, will do the whole shebang and do everything.
So do you see, like on the catering side, when somebody's operating food and beverage, do the lodging operations also get to be a central delivery and ordering point in the community? Because I think that's something people have struggled about worldwide. Can you turn your hotel into a destination, and can you go ahead and do outside work? And I haven't seen a lot of success in it, but maybe it's different here.
Where I saw massive success was during the pandemic. The hotels they pivoted so quickly and were so flexible. So there were some lovely country house hotels there's one in particular I remember put a very funky, almost like a camper van outside the hotel and sold food from there, and people would drive through
because the hotel was shut down for the rooms?
Yes.
Yeah, I wish there had been more partnerships during COVID like that, because when people were coming out of COVID, in the U.S., the restaurants, especially when they had major things like Mother's Day or they had Thanksgiving or something like that, which, by the way, you still hold your conference around Thanksgiving week, I should point out.
12th of November this year.
It's part of the thing. But, the restaurateurs were only allowed to open up by certain percentages. And I would go to them and say, there's a hotel down the street that has ballroom space that they're not using. Why aren't you partnering? Because they could do it. Did people get creative here, and is it continuing?
People were definitely very creative, and you can spot today those that were creative because they are the ones that are flying higher than the others at the moment. I think that creativity does continue, actually. I was going to question it, but looking around and seeing what I see, I think there is a lot of creativity.
I mean, that was a strange period of time, and people sort of are starting to forget that. I always look at it like when we would do webinars and we do podcasts right after it for the first year, everybody wants to talk about COVID, right? What'd you do? How'd you pivot, right? The word pivot was being used. I was like, if that was a drinking game, right, we'd be talking about pivot. Right now it's AI, and I don't want to talk about that. But anyway, so, they talk about how they pivoted to go ahead and do this, especially with delivery. And, so I just think about that. But the way I looked at it was, and nobody ever wants to say the gift of COVID, but what it did do was create new ways of operating and new revenue sources that people did not have. So what are those kinds of things that maybe you see that came out of it in the hospitality industry in general here?
It's interesting. You definitely don't want to say the gift of COVID, but I found a phrase that I use, and I found the time very rewarding in that we were able to help our members and we did see such great innovation. What was your question?
Well, no, I'm just saying that innovation. So what kind of innovation, either, it doesn't have to be about technology, but what kind of innovation probably never would have happened or would not have happened as quickly had it not been for that, but people now find new revenue sources?
Absolutely. I think the most obvious one is the reemergence of QR codes. Who knew that we would be using QR codes again? I thought that they were a little blip that nobody would use again. But now, who doesn't love being in a busy bar, restaurant, whatever it is? And if you can't be bothered to go to the bar, more in a pub,
Right.
or when you're going to buy a pint of beer or whatever you're going to go and buy, you can just order from your table and have it delivered to you. Absolutely.
Well, they're
perfect.
doing that. It's funny because you're absolutely right. That one came out and because they wanted to go touchless, right? So I get that. I was predicting that the QR code, well, first of all, it was dead before, but okay, it comes out, does that. But people, it's like 50-50 now, outside maybe the UK, they have QR codes for everything because it's so easy, even around here, it's so easy to scan. But what they were finding is the linkage between QR codes and payment systems, QR codes and keeping your menu up to date, which maybe in the restaurant industry it's confused because there's so many people in the delivery business and online ordering that makes it confusing in itself. So I don't see it so much for using it at tableside anymore. That's there, but on the other hand, they might just use their handheld for it.
Yeah, I think you might be surprised in London. I think there's still a lot of self-ordering from the table but through using a QR code. And hopefully it would link straight into the point-of-sale system and get a limited view of what the server sees as well.
Well, certainly labor, I'm sure, is a big issue here.
The cost of labor has...
Okay, so if you think about what you just said, is if you're using the QR codes and people can do self-ordering, you may not do it in fine dining, or you might do it for looking up the wine list or something, but if they're doing that, that actually has a positive impact on labor as well. That anytime employees are using their device, bring your own device, they're using their own device, or the restaurant, the customers are able to order on their own. You may get higher orders. You may get higher orders because people are paying more attention because they can order on demand. It's not about less labor all the time. But at the same time, you do have that ability also to work on your labor.
And you don't lose that human touch because there's usually, in a good environment, good establishment, you would have somebody right there to ask a question. If somebody's struggling, if my mother, age 91, was trying to do it, then hopefully somebody will come and take that order for her. And she's not alone. But I think that it frees up those servers to spend more time with the guests when they're delivering the food or when they're clearing the food. You can't get rid of the human touch, and actually that's what hospitality is all about at the end of the day.
So does that come up in your education, your webinars, and your meetings about the human touch and technology?
I think it comes up every day in something that we do.
All right, so where does robotics fall under this? Because half of the robotic devices that I see, like even in high tech this year, had to do with vacuum cleaners, carts. It wasn't necessarily the robots which are slow to pick up to bring your food to your table, but it was for all of the other service things. So how's that fall in there?
Well, I think you've got the robotic process automation going on behind the scenes, which isn't actually...
I saw napkin folding things, sheet.
Well, no, I'm thinking more spreadsheet analysis and pulling information from one to the other and doing a sort of like a chatbot behind the scenes. That is really...
You're opening up like cans of worms here, right? Okay, so there will be something to talk about in the second half because we will talk about chatbots and stuff. But okay, so why don't we just take a quick break because we will pivot the subject here and maybe talk about some of those technologies. So I'm with Jane Pendlebury, the CEO of HOSPA, and we're having a conversation here at Excel in the UK during HRC, HT360, and all the other shows that are here. We'll be right back.
With the rapid expansion of technology in the food and beverage industries, finding the right supplier can become overwhelming and complicated. To simplify this process, the IFBTA created Exchange. Exchange is a powerful search tool where users can easily narrow down their technology search and refine results by application type, geography served, department, and more. Browse resources and learn more about the industry's technology suppliers at exchange.ifbta.org. Now, back to the show.
So welcome back to TechBytes, and we're here at HT360 in the heart of HRC at the Excel Center, and I'm with Jane Pendlebury, who has pointed out we've known each other for a while. I'm not going to use the D word that she used, but we've known each other for a while, and we were just sort of talking about technology in general, but there are some specific subjects which could be some hot topics. So before we took the break, we started talking about robotics, and labor. So let's just sort of pick up right there. So if we're talking about robotics and labor, so where do you see the robotics actually being deployed today successfully, where people aren't worried about their jobs and things, and where it's really a help?
Yeah, I think where I see it most effectively is back of house. It is, well, a revenue management system effectively is a little bit of robotic process, processing an awful lot of data. It's just a step forward from those algorithms that were running the revenue management systems 20 years ago. But I've seen amazing things, transferring reservations from external agencies or OTAs, getting that information in exactly the right format to put into the property management system rather than someone having to...
Well, it is a lot easier to do, right? Because the system's more naturally... Maybe that word integration is going to go by the wayside. I don't know, because in reality, things just sort of figure out how to work with each other, right?
Those mundane processes that people go through day in, day out, processing an invoice, whatever it might be, matching an invoice to a purchase order, that's the sort of thing that can be done by robotics. And what that does is frees people up to think more strategically, to do different things, and have hopefully a less boring time at work and make it much more fun.
Well, also for the customer too, right? Because you can engage. So why don't we just focus on that for a minute? Because you brought up, first of all, the word chatbot, and you're bringing these things up, and everybody talks about AI, including what's going on here. And there's this fear about labor, but at the very beginning, you said about, the hospitality business, about hospitality, and people, you can't take that out of it. So how do you see the business, because you've just pointed out, by the way, customer integration where you're actually using a chatbot or AI to work directly with your guest, right, and your employees. So how do you see that working to keep the hospitality in the hospitality business and keeping sort of our culture in there?
Well, I think you always have to have a choice. Every time I have a tech discussion, I come back to choice. Give your guests the choice of how much they want to interact. And that human touch is crucial to everything that we do in hospitality. We're a people business. That's what we're here. It's one of the oldest industries in the world. We're never going to lose people.
Well, there's some people who argue there's some other industries in the world.
Well, they
can't talk about that. Okay.
I don't think we'll lose that human touch, and I think it's crucially important. And people may lose their jobs, but hopefully it will be through naturally people moving on rather than people actually.
I think they're going to lose their jobs. I think we're going to create new jobs, new venues, new opportunities that are out there. But if you think about it, a person who works smarter and more effective, because somebody is able to go through the information or the training thing, which helps a labor thing, which, by the way, over time, senior citizens, people who have disabilities, because of these technologies, are able to stay in the workforce and do their jobs, right, even for sight. So I see very positive things and interaction, but also at the end of the day, doesn't the guest help to drive this? Because as they're getting more and more used to it, they have expectations for service levels.
Well, I think the guests do have different expectations, and the hotels, restaurants, whoever deliver different expectations, and you don't expect the same from a 5-star hotel that you do from a budget hotel.
Right.
However, I think there is, as I go back to choice again, it's always very important that you still have that human interaction. I think it's key to everything. You can't.
And it's for the employees too. Because you have these employees coming up and they have an expectation of what they're going to use.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? And they don't want to talk to anybody, but it's okay.
They don't want to talk to anyone. They definitely don't want to.
Do you know the hospitality industry? I was talking to somebody about this recently. We're the ones who are actually going to teach people how to interact with other people. Because they may go through school, college and everything, and never, they sit at the table chatting with each other on their phone, right? They're not actually interacting, but you join our business. You have to be able to look somebody in the eye, interact. We may actually teach people how to interact with other human beings.
We may have to. I've heard stories of young men particularly, but probably it goes across the board and across the sexes as well, who literally just game at their desk all day long and then order their food from that same desk. And so they can even make money online. They never get up and they never move away. And that's a dreadful
Well, remote
state of
work
affairs.
also did that too, but now people are sort of coming back together. So, that's a good thing. You get these deja vu moments if you've been around for a while. So one of the deja vu moments is when somebody tells me that technology is brand new, and I think, no, I've seen that before, but maybe it was before its time. So without going down the deja vu hole, which I am going to ask you about in a couple minutes, what I'm curious about is I remember making presentations a number of years ago where I would talk about how you would develop for one, but you had to distribute for many. And whatever you put on the face had to be there. And so the example I would use in the hotel industry is how groups like Sabre and stuff did that front end booking tool. And all of a sudden it became the booking tool, but for users. It was the engine behind it, right? And you mentioned OTA and you mentioned, so a restaurant guy, I understand these things. Okay, so I'm just convincing our audience I know something on the restaurant. So anyway, well, you'll correct me. But anyway, so what I look at that is when you're using that example yourself and you're saying that you have to create your applications, but you have to deliver it. It may be the same engine, but it's delivered with different faces, whether it's by a person, whether it's on a kiosk, whether it's a handheld, right? And we have learned that, haven't we? Because people will book their hotel room, they'll get their room key and never go to the front desk,
Absolutely.
right? And we used to talk about that, checking in your room on the bus from the airport, right? I don't even know how many years ago that was. But really, it's the same thing.
I think also what's interesting about that is that same guest might check in remotely, use digital key, go straight to their room and not interact with anyone. But they might come back the following week with their family and want a completely different experience, want to have a chat with front desk, want to know about the swimming pool in the restaurants and the choices of the class and all those things. So you can't imagine that one person is going to always behave in a similar way.
So you just reminded me of something else that was a famous story. It's one of those stories, you've heard this one before, when people talked about the legendary service at Peninsula or Mandarin, how they remembered what fruit you ate in the back, right? Everybody's talked about that. Nordstrom in the retail business, same thing, right? And there was this story out there that the person would come and the front desk knew so much about you, they'd say, okay, Mr. Grimes, how did your wife enjoy the thing last week? And then, of course, Mr. Grimes was with his last week. But anyway, my point is that, that they would make that story. So this morning I had a conversation with somebody here. We were talking about which AI do you prefer? And we were talking about how, you're going through this whole thing with it, but it remembers at the end of the conversation, it asks you, now would you like to proceed with whatever, right? Can you imagine using AI with a voice that's doing that at the front desk? How are we going to teach that skill of what not to bring up in their preferences and history? Because you know what? That's deja vu. That could happen.
I guess it is a question of training, isn't it? You can train certain things. Well, a robot probably more trainable than a human, actually, when it comes to things like that.
Once it learns it once. Some humans, it takes a long time, they never learn it, right? So how do we keep our culture in our business? Because I always worry about, what makes one hotel, not even a brand, a chain, but an independent or a chain, they're famous because there are levels of service and their culture and what they do. They may all still serve food or have a hotel room. So how do you think we maintain our culture in an age of technology that may be driven by...
Those hotels that I'm thinking of in my head right now that have great culture and great staff and a great reputation, they are probably embracing AI like everybody else, but they're not letting their culture go. It's key to everything that they do.
So you have to really teach it your voice.
Yes, I guess so. But it depends how much you let that technology take over your business. And as I say, keep it back of the house and keep the human touch at the front, I would say.
So if we go back to the deja vu idea, since we've both been around for a while, are there some things that only now seem to be, even maybe at this show or maybe an independent hotel where you guys have huge presence there, are there technologies that people come out, you walk around and some newer person to the industry says to you, this is the greatest thing, we're the first that ever did this. Are there some things like that and you sit there and you go, wow, this was...
And it's I check myself, so I don't say, oh, we've been there, done that, tried that.
Right, but what are the things that seem new to people today, but really are,
I guess in a way, going back to our subject that we've just been drilling down on. The robotic process automation, effectively, a macro in an Excel spreadsheet was a bit of RPA. So that's been around for ages.
Machine learning.
Machine learning, exactly. But I think the AI stuff is new. That is, we're seeing a big shift.
It's because it can think, but rules-based processing, if you thought for it and gave it the rules, maybe the difference is today that the computer is learning the rules and feeding them back to you. And then you have to do your culture and personalization.
And you have to keep that up. But I remember when the internet, do you remember working before the internet? We used to share a computer in the office, maybe. We had just a local
I remember
area
coming to the UK, figuring out what kind of device, what's the phone cord look like that I have to plug into my computer.
Absolutely, to dial up on a crackly modem. So I remember people saying then that the internet has changed everything. There's no denying that. But that was going to do people out of jobs, or it was never going to work,
Right.
or it was too unregulated to succeed. But a whole bunch of new jobs came out of the internet and social media. So influencers, nobody had an influencer or a role.
Well, that's true. They don't have to know what they're influencing. They just have to appear like they know what they're doing.
Right. Yes.
I guess. Well, so if we look forward, every time there's going to be a new subject, of the year. Okay, so AI has been the last 3 years, but quite frankly, even though, and we can hear it in the background, there's an AI thing going on to our right. I tell people all the time, why are we continue to talk about this? We ought to just be assuming it's in the technology. So let's talk about how to use what we're using because we have more data, right?
Yeah.
But yet, every conference has an AI conference on it, is a side day, is a whole section, is a theater still today. So what is going to be the subject, the main subject when we finish this year and we're looking back? Because I don't think it's actually going to be AI. I think it's, maybe agentic AI or something, or voice. What do you think is, as we look back at this year at the end of it, if I get invited to HOSPA on Thanksgiving and I come over to that, what are people going to say this was the year of?
This was the year of. Well, first of all, it's not on Thanksgiving; it's on the 12th of November, so you're good to come. What will people reflect on 2026? The key influencer in 2026.
Yeah. What are the people saying to you they want this year, or what are you starting to see, or even into next year if you want to go to 18 months?
I think what I'm finding more and more is that increasingly commercial role of the CTO, the CIO, the person who's running technology, they are becoming increasingly more commercial, more relevant, have a voice at the table now. And I think that full integration
in the brands, they certainly may not report to finance anymore.
Absolutely. And they have.
So is it a CTO, a CIO, or CMO, or CDO?
CDO, what's that one?
Chief Digital Officer,
Chief Digital Officer,
which I've seen replacing the CTO and the CIO, but the CMOs, marketing, sometimes has it. So at the end of the day, I hear the word digital used a lot more.
Yes, digital transformation, that's
there's a key word, right? Okay, so that's digital transformation is one of the keywords of the year, which I was asking people in December what they were going to talk about. Digital transformation was certainly one. And also, not contactless. Frictionless was another term. Is there something else we should be thinking about here?
Yeah, absolutely. Frictionless. That's so true. And it's acknowledging that guest who I said might check in completely digitally and never interact, and acknowledging that the next time they come, they might behave entirely differently. And both of those have got to be frictionless.
And that's offered even in luxury. So if you're a full service luxury hotel, now I do see a lot of people investing in what they put in the rooms and the technology and making you feel at home. But sometimes I got to tell you, every time I go to Las Vegas, when you're confusing me, and I love tech and gadgets, and I can't figure out how to open up the drapes or get the TV channels. TV channel changing is the worst, right? But sometimes we still haven't got, maybe voice will take care of that over time when they really have voice, but then everybody's going to worry about we're listening to them in the,
yes,
we already worry about that, right?
Those Amazon Alexas in the room, that was long debated. Very few people did actually put Alexas.
But that's coming, isn't it? Because people know voice and it's universal, and language translation will
I guess
that,
it
right?
probably will come.
Eventually.
But whether it will be through one's own device or through the Amazon Alexa, for example, would be freestanding.
Good point. So maybe we'll spend less in the room on the technology will be there, but you walk Yeah, we used to talk about this, that the technology be in your pocket and you would walk in and create the space around you.
And it's important. They used to say a hotel room should be at least as good as what you experience at home, if not better. That's getting trickier with technology now, isn't it?
Well,
with the TVs especially.
You'd go in the TV, but you get a menu that says, do you want to be on Hulu? Do you want to be on Netflix? Do you want to be on whatever? So you're streaming your own in there, but it is more about your own tech, I think, right?
Yeah, and turning the lights off and switching the blinds up, all those things can be very frustrating if you just
It's awful.
Turning the lights off at night.
It's very it is very frustrating, indeed, that things like that happen. So as we think about the rest of the year for you, so what's your travel schedule look like? What are you going to be attending this year or doing? Are you going to leave the UK or are you going to see it high tech? What's on your agenda?
I don't travel anywhere near as much as I used to because we are so busy here in the UK. So I'm sure I have got some trips, but I'm not sure. I probably won't go to high tech. I haven't actually been to high tech for a number of years, which I know is always good fun and a great networking. But we have lots going on in the UK to keep me busy. So we've got some great events coming up. We've obviously got the conference, which we've mentioned, which is our big event. 600-700 people should.
Let's put some restaurant tech stuff in there. We'll come over for that. Give us an excuse, right? For that, because I'm glad to hear that you're doing that. There is such and the group companies that are in both markets is also very important, isn't it?
Yeah. The other thing we're doing, a lovely event that we do every year now, it's our Great Green Balloon Debate, which is a Great Green Balloon Debate.
Green balloon.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it's like a hot air balloon, and we have 10 or 12 people, all with the same mission, and that's of ESG, saving the world. But they've all got their different ways of approaching it. So it could be waste management, it could be food savings, it could be emissions, whatever it is that they're doing, that they're trying to save the world with. They all start off this event. They're 5-minute presentations.
Why is it a debate?
Well, the image is that everyone's in a balloon, in a hot air balloon. And
they're full of hot air?
Well, they're not so much full of hot air, but they have to chuck people out because they're losing ground. So they chuck the less relevant ones out, and then the winner stays in the hot air balloon.
They're making choices.
So it's a great education.
When is that?
I think it's May. I think it's May the 12th, but check the HOSPA website to be sure. I think it's May the 12th. It's at the Cumberland Hotel.
And what is the HOSPA website, by the way?
Thanks, Rob. It is hospa.org, HOSPA.org.
And then they'll find everything in there, and HOSPace.
Yeah, HOSPace is a link to HOSPace.
Is in there as well, but you have that. Well, listen, it's been great chatting you. This is a conversation I chat with you all the time, when we get together, but it's really great to be able to do it this way. I think that our organizations are actually very complementary, in approach in what we're doing. And, the UK market, leads in a lot of different areas and actually, even you mentioned the country hotels and things. I think about that, because I've been to some of those. So there's a lot of things to be learned and there's a lot of entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah, brilliant.
So hopefully we'll do this a little bit more often.
Yeah, and thanks for the opportunity, Rob. It's great to chat to you with the microphone in front of us. That doesn't happen very often.
No, it doesn't. And, and I like running into you, but we don't get enough time at Independent Hotel. But you guys do a great job there, as well. And that really, you can see it all there on the lodging side. So as well. So it's been a pleasure to have a long-awaited conversation with Jane Pendlebury, who is the CEO of HOSPA in the UK. And you should look them up. And anything in lodging and restaurant, education, networking, accounting, finance, started with accounting groups, got the technology and covered it all.
Revenue management, yeah.
There you go. So great. So thank you for joining me on TechBytes. And it's a pleasure seeing you again and seeing you here.
Thank you, Rob. Thanks for the opportunity.
This podcast is brought to you by the International Food and Beverage Technology Association. The IFBTA is the industry's voice of food service, hospitality, and retail technology, providing thought leadership as your single, impartial, and go-to resource. The IFBTA offers in-person and online communities to connect with your peers, the exchange, an all-encompassing global technology resource, and an industry-wide professional education and certification program. The bottom line is the IFBTA is your place to gather, learn, and share in conversations like the one we're having today. Thank you for joining us on this episode of TechBytes, powered by the IFBTA. I'm Rob Grimes, your host, and I look forward to taking our next bite of technology together.